Hey, what's up? It's Bond, and today I want to talk about Xbox tax. If you've been paying attention to social media at all, which, why? But I do it too, so we're in the same boat. You will have, in the gaming sphere, seen this conversation recently about Xbox tax. And what that is basically a conspiracy theory that there is a kind of industry-wide bias against products that Xbox makes, and that reporting on things that involve Xbox are not treated the same as similar things with other platforms, and that like game reviews for Xbox exclusive games or games made by Xbox studios are treated differently than other platforms or third parties. What I'll just come out and say fairly bluntly is I don't think that's really a thing. I do think there's a more complicated conversation to be had, which I'll explain a bit. But I don't think that it's a straight up Xbox tax as has been put out. There's people who are showing examples of, one publication or even one journalist at certain publications, how they will treat similar situations differently. So say Sony has some kind of story written about them, about something they did. There's been screenshots and stuff posted of when Xbox maybe had a similar story, that even the same journalist had a very different tone with the two companies, where it was more negative with Xbox and maybe more positive with Sony or Nintendo or a third party. Other examples are trying to compare games that maybe had similar issues or that subjectively you felt like were of similar quality, and showing how the score given by various outlets, especially outlets by the same journalist, where one game received, from a third party or other platform, received a significantly higher score than an Xbox release game that was of that person's opinion of similar quality or polish or finish or whatever. I don't put too much into that. It's okay for individuals, even if it's the same journalist, to have different opinions on things. Just because you thought that Forza Motorsport was just as good, if not better, than Gran Turismo 7, doesn't mean that journalist has to agree. And you can give your own subjective reasons for why you believe what you believe. That doesn't necessarily trump that journalist's opinion, even if you can break it down point by point and make some kind of argument that the score differential doesn't make sense. I think people need to get away from the idea that that's some big conspiracy theory in the industry to hold Xbox down and to lift the other platforms up above it. I think it's just a person having a different opinion. That's especially true if you're trying to make examples out of situations that maybe it is the same outlet, but it's two different journalists. Obviously, people are going to have different takes. I really do wish that gaming journalists were more objective and reporting was more based on like fact and less on opinion. We have very few of those types left in the industry, Jason Schreier being the most notable one. What I've talked about before is that many journalists that I've noticed in gaming these days are more along the lines of like content creators who don't really have any journalism background, and they just kind of throw out hot takes as articles. And that's where I think a lot of this stuff gets muddy, because if someone isn't doing research and getting sources and getting quotes and snippets and actually doing journalism, then what it turns into is what we have nowadays, where Kotaku and IGN and GameSpot and PC Gamer are mostly just content creator hot take farms with a little bit of journalism mixed in. Sometimes it's hard to find. And I think that is the main reason why people have kind of gotten onto this. They've seen all of these journalists giving their opinions on everything with very little objective journalism happening, and they've turned that into a narrative that there's an Xbox tax. Are there people who have some pretty obvious biases? Absolutely. Many of the podcasts I watch and a lot of the journalists I pay attention to, I think it would be hard to argue they don't have a bias against Xbox, at least to a point, but that's okay. They're human. And I think it's almost explainable to a point. If you think about it from a journalist's point of view or just a gamer's point of view, if your job is to pay attention to an industry where one of the platforms has consistently put out really good games, has consistently put out really good hardware, and has done those two things so well that a lot of their maybe anti-consumer things and some of their more, their less attractive parts of their business kind of get covered up, while this competitor, which I'm talking about Xbox now, kind of steps on rakes all the time, maybe hasn't put out as many good games, or at least not as many big acclaimed games as the other platforms. And they're doing a pretty good job with a lot of service stuff and all of that. I can kind of understand where, purposefully or not, a bias can develop where you lean towards the platform that's given you better experiences, more consistent experiences, and honestly probably gives you better feedback when you write articles about them. It's not a purposeful thing for most, I think. I think that maybe this Xbox tax is coming from people noticing that a lot of gamers, especially journalists, just really like Sony because they've put out a lot of really good stuff for a really long time, while Xbox is seemingly still trying to get its feet underneath it. That said, the last point I will make is that it has been really interesting, the commentary on this. There's a few choice people who have really been pushing this like, oh, Xbox tax is so stupid thing. I will say that a few of the people who have really been harping on this are some of the most biased and demonstrably like hyper biased people against Xbox, who really do crap on it no matter what, and maybe kind of ignore the issues with the other platforms where they would highlight them with Xbox. But that's just the way people are, especially clickbait folks, creators, and especially, whose job isn't to necessarily be objective and to give you the truth about things that are sourced and things like that, but they're mostly there just to give you their opinion. And at the end of the day, any good creator knows that subjective hot takes are always going to get more clicks than objective statements. So I'm not saying there aren't people out there who maybe apply an Xbox tax, but this concept that it's a industry-wide problem is kind of silly. And being an Xbox fan myself, it's kind of up to Xbox to change the narrative. They've got to, with all of these studios, start putting out a bunch of really good games, and they've got to change that narrative themselves. And it's not going to happen this gen. They can make progress this gen, and it's probably not going to happen next gen either. But hopefully by the end of the next generation, most of the big reasons people kind of dunk on Xbox can be alleviated, but we'll have to wait and see. It's hard to tell. So there's my hot take on those hot takes and that story that's been going around. Let me know what you think down in the comments about the Xbox tax and that whole conversation. If you like this video, or if you want other videos about gaming news, speculation, Mass Effect, The Division, some other games I really do focus on, please subscribe to the channel. Like the video if you did. You can find me as Bond Diesel all over the internet on all social media for the most part. And you can check out my weekly gaming podcast, The Bonfire, or my semi-monthly Mass Effect podcast, the Mass Effect Hypecast, on all podcast platforms and right here on this YouTube channel. That's all I have for this one, so until next time.